there are a lot of lists that will tell you what the best zoos in Europe supposedly are. However, they just list the most obvious and popular zoos. Rankings are based on how big the zoo is, how many animals there are, how many visitors come every year, and who has the best ratings on travel platforms. Well, this list is going to be different. Hi, my name is Martin, and for the past 4 years I've been traveling all over Europe and visited around 150 different zoos in order to present them on my German channel Zooerlebnis. And now that I'm finally going to start doing this in English as well, I decided the best way to get you up to speed is to tell you about some of my favorite zoos I've visited so far. And while there will be some obvious picks, there will also be a lot of surprises, especially at the top. And my number 10 is probably also not gonna be on any other list like this. But I absolutely adore Gaia Zoo in Kerkrade. The Netherlands are home to many amazing zoos, and there will be another one on this list. And while Gaia Zoo is not one of their biggest zoos, it won me over with its really well-realized concept. The park is named after the Greek goddess of Earth and also refers to the Gaia theory, which basically proposes that Earth is one big living organism. And while I think that maybe they can build upon this idea a little bit deeper on an educational level, the park still captures this idea really well. The zoo is structured in eco-zones. There is a taiga area, a savanna area, and a rainforest area, and all of them are designed really well and have a lot of great exhibits. Animal husbandry is across the board on a very high level. There is not one exhibit here that I would consider lackluster, and while this zoo was established only in 2005, they already and consistently improved upon what was already a very modern zoo. For example, one of the newer highlights is a giant tiger aviary that houses so many different species of birds, you can hardly count them. And in the savanna area, which is designed around a mixed species exhibit with giraffes, you will be stunned by the biggest colony of flamingos in all of Europe. I mean, yes, most zoos have more than a handful of them, but here there are round about 400. However, I probably like the jungle area the most, especially the sector around the Monkey Islands is just beautiful in my opinion, and I'm very eager to see the new bush dog exhibit. And I'm also very excited that this zoo is going to be expanded in the next few years. Which is amazing because the only reasoning I had for not including Gaia Zoo on this list was that, like I said, it is not the biggest zoo. But screw that, Gaia Zoo is an absolute insider tip, so it's getting my notch over many bigger zoos that you would expect here. The next zoo on this list is even smaller, just 10.5 hectares. But at the same time, it's one of the most important zoos in Europe, especially from a historical standpoint. I'm talking about Zoo Antwerp, which is probably my favorite city zoo. Well, I mean, there is a city zoo that is ranked higher on this list, but this is the zoo that is best at being a city zoo. What I mean by that is, yes, Zoo Antwerp is in the middle of the city, there is very limited space, no way to expand it, and while there are still a lot of animal species here, including big ones, they still somehow manage to ensure good exhibits for them, way better than Zoo Frankfurt, for example. Zoo Antwerp is still continuously getting modernized. Currently, new exhibits for tigers, snow leopards and sea lions are in the works, while gorillas and chimpanzees have already gotten new exhibits that I like quite a lot. Yet my favorite exhibit is probably this aviary, which also houses Cape buffaloes. I mean, that's really unique. Zoo Antwerp also benefits from having a sister zoo. It's called Zoo Plankendal and is way bigger in space. So for example, they moved their breeding flock of elephants over there, and in Antwerp they only keep young bulls, who then move on once they are old enough to breed for themselves. Still, I'm not going to lie to you, Zoo Antwerp wouldn't be on this list if it would just be about animal welfare. The monkey house in particular definitely needs to be improved, and logically even the newer exhibits are not the biggest and best exhibits there are. But I just feel like the evolution of this zoo is inspiring, especially for other city zoos. Because by now almost all animals are held under good conditions, yet they still keep offering visitors an amazing collection of animals, including many highlights such as Komodo dragons, koalas, king penguins, and even some animals that do not start with the letter K. Also, the parkway is beautiful and rich in history. There are many extraordinary historical buildings that are still standing. For example, the Egyptian temple was built in 1856. So even if you are just a little bit interested in architecture, trust me, Zoo Antwerp will amaze you on that front as well. The next zoo on this list is probably my favorite in terms of theming. Zoo Hanover has still a few areas left that are not modernized, but everything that has been modernized is beautiful. Especially the Yukon Bay area, which is one of my favorite zoo areas in general. I mean, just look at the way they designed these polar bear enclosures. Not only is the theming on point, this might also be one of the best polar bear enclosures in Germany. And while I still feel there are a few exceptions, generally they manage to combine great enclosures for the animals with amazing theming. I feel it's a great balance, and therefore you do not have to feel bad about enjoying this beautiful scenery, which was designed with the goal in mind that everywhere you look, it should make for a good postcard. Also, this boats ride through the African area is my favorite boats ride in any zoo, and this show they put on with the sea lions and seals is one of my favorite animal shows in any zoo as well. So overall, Hanover calls itself Erlebniszoo for a reason. Erlebniszoo translates to Experience Zoo. Stupid name. Oh, and yes, the farmyard might not be the most spectacular part of the zoo, but I really love it. There are a lot of great farmyards in German zoos especially, and this one is up there, definitely. Next up, we're going back to the Netherlands, where the Royal Burgers Zoo in Arnhem is my absolute favorite. Or to be more precise, as a kid, this was my absolute #1 zoo. Back in the 90s, Burgers Bush and Burgers Desert especially were zoo experiences I never had before. I can still vividly remember watching a documentary where the zoo director of Arnhem said everything is possible as long as you have the money necessary. And they definitely invested a lot to make you feel like you were visiting an actual living space. Like you were actually in a rainforest or the desert. In that regard, Burgers Zoo Arnhem was groundbreaking and inspired many other zoos to do something similar. The African enclosure that houses giraffes, zebras, different species of antelopes, rhinos and many more is still one of my favorite African mixed species enclosures. It's so big and lush, and you can just feel that this was actually once a safari area. The ape enclosures were also groundbreaking for its time, but maybe you start to wonder what the zoo has done lately. Back in the year 2000 they opened Burgers Ocean, which till today is one of my favorite aquariums in a zoo. In 2008 they opened Burgers Rimba, which is a really amazing area for animals from Southeast Asia. In 2017 they opened Burgers Mangrove, which, as the name suggests, is a big mangrove hall, so that's another area where you really feel like you're entering a living space. There are butterflies flying everywhere, you can see crabs, and there are manatees. You can watch manatees here. Oh my god, it's so amazing, I love it. Sadly, this is still the last really big thing they have done. They improved the zoo in many smaller ways, but I'm really looking forward for the next big thing, because when they go big, they create something where the whole worldwide zoo community is looking at and is going like, oh my god. My next zoo, however, is probably my most basic pick on this list, but I had to include Zoo Berlin. It's the oldest zoo in Germany and one of the most important zoos in the world, and just like with Zoo Antwerp, I really love how you can still feel this rich history throughout the park, although not surprisingly a lot of it has been destroyed during the Second World War, so another thing we can thank the Nazis for. And by the way, I really like how they do not shy away from this part of their history as well. Obviously, a lot has been built since then, but to be frank, a lot of what has been built post-war throughout the last century is neither really pleasing to look at, nor does it fit modern standards in animal husbandry. One of the few exceptions to me is the Hippo House from 1997. I love how it's designed. It's one of the most amazing houses in terms of architecture to me, so till this day this is one of my favorite animal houses. But up until recently I probably couldn't have justified to put this zoo on a list like this because it really felt outdated. So even though this always has been one of the most important zoos in the world, and for a long time it even was the most species-rich zoo in the entire world as well, it certainly was not one of the best zoos. But under the helm of its new director Dr. Knierim, in the last 10 years a lot has happened. Since 2017, Berlin Zoo is once more home to giant pandas. And their home, the so-called Panda Garden, is beautifully designed. And even though I have seen quite a few giant panda exhibits by now, this is probably still my favorite. They also completely renovated the old Predator's house, which is now called Empire of Cats, or Reich der Jäger in German. And since 2023, there's also this giant rhino pagoda, which is just stunning to look at. One of my favorite new exhibits, period. So even though there is still a lot left to do, the development over the last 10 years has been incredible. I mean, I only named the most important things here, but I will talk about Berlin Zoo in detail very soon. So let's move on to number 5, which is Paradise, a zoo that has been growing more and more popular over the last few years, so by now it's probably on many people's lists, so I almost feel like I have to address why it's only my number 5 straight away. Well, let's just say Paradise is a zoo that I like less and less the more closer I look. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still an amazing zoo to visit, that's why it's number 5 on this list. I would encourage everybody to go because it's an experience you just need to have if you love zoos. The collection of animals here is incredible. There are so many amazing species here that you cannot find in many other zoos. Giant pandas or koala bears are just the tip of the iceberg here. And the scenery just makes me speechless every time. I stand by what I said, Hannover is probably my favorite in that regard because, well, Paradise is almost too much. For example, in the Middle Kingdom, you are exploring Europe's biggest Chinese garden. There are these giant Chinese temples just standing there because why not? Then there is the Kingdom of Ganesha, where you can find a lot of Hindu temples as well. And I mean, just look at the way this orangutan house is built. Like, what? Why? Ever wanted to see a polar bear dive like, I don't know, 10 meters deep or something? Well, you can, obviously. And sure, let's just put the gorilla house inside of a volcano with smoke and everything. But when you start to look past the fact that it's a great view to see white tigers inside of a courtyard of this amazingly built temple, you realize they are cornered by walls. They can't even look outside, and this is overall not a great tiger exhibit. And then you start to see it everywhere. Most enclosures here are not great. Most of it is not bad, it's alright for the most part, and a few exhibits are even great, but even then they have a tendency to overcrowd them with too many animals because, well, you always need something to look at. So to me, by now it feels more like an amusement park than a zoo. I mean, they are building this giant new tropical hall where you can also go swimming, because of course you can. So to round this up, it's number 5 because it's one of the most amazing places you can visit, and I also enjoy myself quite a lot when I'm here every time. I love this park. There is so much to see, there's so much to enjoy. Purely from a visitor standpoint, this might be even the best zoo in all of Europe, but it's only number 5 because they are clearly spending a lot of money. They are earning a lot of money, yet I have the feeling they are investing it in a way that does not prioritize animal husbandry but the visitor's experience. It's like they are not even trying to be the best zoo possible for the animals living there. They are only trying to be the best zoo for the people who come and visit. And for that reason, this zoo might be amazing, but it could be so much better. And it's only fitting that we are continuing this list with Loro Parque, because this is a zoo that is also on the first glimpse all about spectacle, but here, the closer I looked, the more I realized that this zoo is so much more than this, and only then did I truly fall in love with it. At first glimpse, Loro Parque is all about this amazing collection of parrots and 4 really incredible animal shows, including the killer whale show. Since Marineland in France will probably stop its orca show in the foreseeable future, and well, you can't really travel to Moscow right now, Loro Parque might very soon be the last place in Europe where you can experience killer whales in this way. Obviously, this also comes with a lot of criticism, and while I did get to see that they definitely spare no effort for these animals, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about this. However, you should definitely understand that Loro Parque is so much more than this. For example, Loro Parque is the first zoo that welcomed a bachelor group of gorillas, something that is absolutely necessary for conservation breeding now. They have this amazing enclosure for Antarctic penguins, and it's a stunning experience, but once again, if you learn more about it, it just gets more amazing. Look at the ceiling. Do you see all those lights? Yeah, they perfectly mimic the way the light would behave in the real Antarctic according to the seasons. And you might think, wow, this is a really amazing modern exhibit, but in reality it was opened in 1999. Truly brand new is Coral Kingdom. It's the biggest coral reef outside of the ocean, and you can admire the view through 40 meters of curved glass, while your experience is further expanded by state-of-the-art projection technology. It's stunning, and I have never seen anything like it. But at least as a zoo critic, my favorite part of Loro Parque is actually the animal embassy. This is an area of the park dedicated to showcasing what a modern zoo should stand for. It shows you what Loro Parque does in terms of conservation, animal husbandry and research. And it does so in a way that other zoos really should feel inspired by. Because, for example, you can literally watch along as behavior research is being done right in front of you. Oh, and by the way, this is also probably the only zoo in the world with a negative carbon footprint. So, like I said, the more you learn about Loro Parque, the more amazing this place gets, and I can't wait to tell you more about it real soon. But for now, let's move on to my third favorite zoo, which is also my favorite zoo in Germany, which is Zoo Leipzig. This won't surprise anybody in Germany, because here I think it's pretty common to say that this is our best zoo, yet I'm not really sure if the rest of the world really got that memo, because in most rankings of the best zoos in the world or Europe, they ever only talk about Zoo Berlin, which is not the worst take, but still insane to me. So why is Zoo Leipzig the real best zoo in Germany to me and many others? Well, this actually once was probably one of the worst zoos in all of Germany, but then they created this master plan called Zoo der Zukunft, which translates to Zoo of the Future. And while most zoos do have some kind of a master plan, here they did something crazy. They actually went through with it. I mean, they are not completely done yet. They are currently still working on Feuerland, which is a new area for sea lions, penguins and more. But ever since the year 2000, most of the zoo has been modernized, so by now Zoo Leipzig is really a great example of what a modern zoo should look like. For example, the so-called Pongoland is still my favorite area for giant apes. They have all 4 species here, so chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas and orangutans. In total, Pongoland is 30,000 square meters in size, so all 4 species have really big, well-structured, lush outdoor enclosures, but the indoor enclosures are also very well designed, and you get great viewing opportunities either way. It doesn't matter if the animals are inside or outside, you will always have the opportunity to observe the animals and their amazing social behavior. And then there is Gondwanaland, a giant tropical hall with almost 170 exotic animals and around 500 different species of plants, more than 1.5 acres of rainforest for you to explore, and trust me, it's an amazing experience. You will explore South America, Africa and Asia, all with a lot of amazing animals for you to see. For example, there are giant otters, ocelots, pygmy hippos, owl-faced monkeys, Komodo dragons, fish cats, Malayan tapirs and many more. All of them living in enclosures that are beautifully embedded in this tropical environment, which of course houses a lot of free-roaming animals as well, so there is always something to discover, and you can even explore Gondwanaland by boat, though I must admit, once you have done that once or twice, it might get a little bit dull, but the overall experience of Gondwanaland is something that will probably never cease to amaze me. This is hands down my favorite indoor zoo experience. This could be a standalone thing and I would love it already, but nope, it's just a tiny part of the best zoo in all of Germany. For my second favorite zoo, we have to travel to Denmark, and once again I at least have the feeling that it's a park that is not that well known in the rest of Europe, yet Knuthenborg Safari Park definitely deserves world fame. At first glimpse you might think this is just a normal safari park. You drive with your car through a giant field and there are giraffes and antelopes and rhinos, and yeah, that's cool and all, but what's so special about this? Oh, you can sleep right next to the animals. Well, yeah, that is a really great experience, but once again, you can have that in many safari parks. But how many of them are located on an old estate? How many of them are 400 hectares big? How many of them have this much nature? How many of them are directly located at the sea? Still not sure if this is something special. Well, what about one of the biggest elephant enclosures in the world? What about these tiger enclosures that you can experience from an elevated pathway? By the way, biggest tiger enclosure in all of Europe. Do you like dinosaurs? Do you want to explore a forest with big animatronic dinosaurs? Or would you like to experience one of the most amazing modern paleontological museums in the world? Don't worry, you don't have to choose, you can just do both here. Oh, and if you're traveling with kids, there's also this really great giant playground that even has a small roller coaster and a white water ride. So yeah, there's probably something for everybody, even though this park does not have the biggest collection of animals. And I'm not even sure if I can truly give it justice here by just describing it. I feel like this is a park that you definitely have to experience for yourself. So please, do yourself a favor. If you have the opportunity to visit Knuthenborg, do it. And now there's only one more zoo left, my number one, my favorite zoo overall. But first, let's talk honorable mentions. I have not seen every zoo in Europe. I know there are still a lot of great zoos left for me to visit for the very first time, and I'm sure that parks like Zoo Zurich, Chester Zoo or Yorkshire Wildlife Park, for example, are great contenders to enter this list in the future. So please let me know in the comments which zoos I definitely have to see, what are your favorite zoos in Europe and in your country especially, and maybe we can make this an annual thing. Okay, now let me address 2 zoos I have visited that you would expect on a list like this, yet miraculously they are not here. I'm talking about Zoo Schönbrunn in Vienna and Zoo Prague. 2 zoos that are considered to be among the best in the world. And they probably are, and I also did like them a lot. But I realized I did not fall in love with them. They are big zoos, they are rich in history, they have many animals, everything you want to see in a zoo and more. And for the most part they also have beautiful parkways. If I would be trying to make this list objectively, of course I would have to include them over Gaia Zoo. I mean, that's a small zoo. It does not nearly have as many different animal species, it does not have the same rich history, but it has a clear and consistent concept. While in Zoo Prague and Vienna there are large areas of them where I'm like, yeah, well, that's a zoo. Not an amazing zoo, not even a very good zoo, just a basic zoo. I mean, Zoo Prague does have a few world-class exhibits, but in Vienna I'm struggling to think of any exhibits that I would put in a top 10 list. So why should I include it here? Just because it's the oldest zoo in the world? That's not a very strong argument, even though the historic part of the zoo is beautiful, don't get me wrong. So let me be clear, I really like Zoo Vienna, but it's not one of my personal favorites. And I know that's controversial, that's why I'm talking about this so long, so please let me know. Am I alone? Do you understand why I did not include it? Or why am I wrong about this? Please let me know in the comments. But enough about zoos that I did not quite like enough to put them on my personal top 10. Let's talk about my absolute favorite zoo. Once again, probably a zoo you won't see coming. Unless you know my German videos, then you could probably guess that my favorite zoo in Europe is located in France, near the river Loire. But it's not Zoopark des Bouvales. It's Biopark der Duela Fontaine. And if you don't know anything about this zoo, you just have to look at it and you will immediately see why this zoo is special. Yes, this zoo is located in a former quarry and many of the enclosures here were just carved into the stone. There's a giraffe camp, a valley with leopards, Rhino Valley, which is a huge area for black rhinos. Then there is this amphitheater for vultures. There are many aviaries that also once again were just completely carved into the stone. There is one aviary that houses many different African birds and also owl-faced monkeys, but also okapis, which is an incredible idea. But the biggest and probably also best aviary is this enormous South American aviary. It's over 1 hectare in size and just feels like you are just walking through a valley where all these birds are flying, and it's just incredible. It's mind-blowing. It's just something you won't see anywhere else in the world. And then there's the Crater of Carnivores, which was opened in 2020, and it includes this amazing and incredibly structured lion enclosure, which is also once again huge. It's hands down probably the best lion enclosure period. And if you come here at feeding time and you get to see the Atlas lions actually moving in this terrain, it's just such an incredible sight and an experience you won't forget. Which is true for the entire park. I mean, there are a few normal enclosures that were not built in this way. I do still like them a lot, but they're not that special. But the way this zoo is structured, the way it was built, all these incredible and unique sights, and the fact that just most of the exhibits are just really, really good. Like, if I were to make a top list with the best exhibits in the world, I would mention Duela-Fontaine multiple times. So yeah, this is one of the best zoos in the world. This is one of the most unique zoos in the world. And so far, it's my personal favorite zoo in all of Europe. Once again, please let me know what your favorites are. Hit that like button if you, well, liked the video. And if you want to accompany me on my further journey throughout the world of zoos, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. And if you also ring the bell, you will never miss a new zoo video from me. And as long as this new English channel is somewhat successful, I will continue to give you the best zoo videos possible. I can promise you that. So thanks for now and see you guys soon, or as we say in Germany, auf Wiedersehen.